Okay, everyone, welcome to the next segment of Kingpins 24 Canada. I am here with Kelly Drennan, founder of Fashion Takes Action, Sabine Weber, founder of Sustainable Strategies and Solutions, and Philippe Cantin, Senior Director of Sustainable Innovation and Circular Economy at the Retail Council of Canada. And we are all here today to discuss chasing circularity. So it's been pretty amazing to see more and more brands and designers trying to actually implement circular solutions into their business models. But we know that there are still many challenges inherent with garment-to-garment recycling. So Kelly, I'm wondering if you can share some of your insights on the major challenges that need the most attention in order to scale circularity.
Sure. It's a great question, and there's definitely a few obstacles that we're still needing to address. In no particular order, I would say the quality of the fibers is one of those. So as we wear and wash our clothing, obviously the quality degrades, and then also when you recycle garment recycling, the quality is then also degraded, and oftentimes they are blended with virgin materials in order to get that quality back. I think the next biggest one, and this is something Sabine and I hope to be working together to do some research on, is the sortation. It really needs to be faster and accurate. The current model is, humans sorting through, and so it's, sorting on sort of the condition of the garment, but also the composition of the materials. And because it's humans that are doing that, it's very time consuming and therefore comes with a big price tag. So I think that's a bit of a cog in this sort of recycling wheel. And so there's things like, infrared sensors that are being tested. There's RFID thread that can be woven into a garment as well. So there's some really great technologies that are happening, but again, just not to scale, which is the third, I guess, obstacle, and that is really investing in these existing technologies, and both from, not just the brands, but we need to get all the players involved in investing in this, including the government. So we're doing some research right now for the Canadian Federal Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, and it's a textile recycling feasibility study. So we hope to actually present a business case to the ministry as to whether or not it makes sense for them to invest in developing that kind of an infrastructure in Canada. And I guess the last one, this kind of relates back to the sorting, is the blends. There's the technologies that are available or more widely available to address like 100% synthetic, 100% poly, or 100% cotton, but most of our garments are now a mix of these fiber. And so there are some technologies that are now figuring out how to address that. But again, it's really about separating out these polymers. And then there's also the hardware that's on a lot of clothes, if you think of denim and rivets and zippers and buttons and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of challenges that the industry is facing, but I have hope anyway that there's some really smart people out there that are working to solve these problems.
Definitely, and I think that the major problem for me too is the infrastructure, especially because of the brands that do want to implement those take back programs and really would actually like to, have their business actually operate circularly and recycle whatever they're taking back from the consumers, but because this infrastructure isn't there, it's unmotivating for them almost sometimes to actually, work towards that even. And Sabine, I know you also have some insights on what is needed on the government side of things in order for textile recycling to be successful. Would you be able to share some of that with us?
Well, it's about less how can we make textile recycling successful. I think the government is mainly involved in defining the waste materials. And right now, textile waste is not a waste category. So this means the municipalities don't really have to separate textiles from the other waste stream. And as long as they don't do this, they will also not monitor it. And because they're not monitoring, we don't even know how much textiles are really in the garbage. And because nobody really knows this, we don't really know how big is the size or the potential size of a recycling industry from these textiles which end up in the garbage. And of course, the first step would be from the government side to see, okay, here is a waste source and we need to address this. This would be the very, very first step to recognize that textile is actually wasted.
Yeah, and it's pretty crazy to me that it isn't categorized as a waste stream, because you kind of dream of having a textile kind of clothing bin when you're sorting your recycling, your green bin here in Toronto. I know we're lucky to have all that we have in Toronto. Some places don't even have a green bin. But imagine having that textile recycling bin where you could actually, be contributing to that. And again, a lot of people that drop off their clothing at those privately owned donation centers too, a lot of the times people are assuming that those, if they do not go to someone in need, they are going to be recycled into other products as well. But a lot of the times that is actually just downcycled into rags, and it's not actually of higher quality. So I think it's really interesting that there's the opportunity for the government to step in here and actually help the fashion industry achieve their goals. But obviously we need some more lobbying for that, but we'll get there. And I'm really excited by the work you two are doing on your project. And Philippe, I'd kind of love to hear from you, kind of what brands can do to contribute to the circularity, because at the moment, I'm kind of wondering if textile recycling is the better option, or if there are other options that they could do in terms of, creating this impact within their own brands.
Yeah, so for sure, I mean, textile recycling is very inspiring, but there are definitely still roadblocks on the way to circularity, as Sabine and Kelly pointed out earlier. And we've seen reuse platforms being developed. The web has enabled that quite a bit. The current pandemic makes that a bit challenging in some cases. But then again, when you look at the fashion industry and just, stores having to wait a few days to then allow for garments to be back and available for the customers, once people have tried them out, then, clearly there are challenges everywhere. So when you think of reuse and second market in the thrift industry, I mean, this is an area that's still growing even during the pandemic. It's actually, because of anytime we face economic hardships, we're actually drawn to that type of industry. And there's still a lot, I think, to leverage in terms of opportunities in the thrift industry. Some brands are not necessarily as interested in being part of this, having partnerships with thrift, because they see reputational aspects for them. They want to control how their branded products end up being remarketed. But I think there are more and more agreements between brands and second market retailers, and also discount retailers, to allow for that material to go, down the path of reuse. And with the current economic crisis, I think there's momentum to leverage on that. Definitely, I'd say the one area that probably would have the biggest impact is not even through reuse, but through reduction. So reducing just how much is being marketed. And overproduction has been a problem that plagued the industry for more than a decade now. And excessive inventory, we were looking at tens of billions of dollars in excessive inventory everywhere right before the pandemic hit. And now we've seen brands just foregoing whole seasonal collections and just going with the ones that they haven't sold. And I think the current situation probably is creating momentum on them kind of reducing production, improving their bottom line, and also, improving how their overall environmental performance. And the one other aspect I'd say on overproduction, it usually brings, issues with quality of fiber. And as Kelly pointed out, that's a huge problem for recycling. And it's a huge problem for reuse. A lot of thrift stores won't even put on the market items that were never worn by anybody before, just because they're low quality. So again, quality of fiber can be a problem. So yeah, reduction is the first R in the 3 Rs, and definitely would have the most impact if we were to look at that one.
We actually have 7 Rs at Fashion Takes Action.
I know, right? We do now.
And you mentioned like resale and rental and repair and repurposing, and recycling really is, I think, the last resort, right? We want to keep our clothes in circulation as long as possible. So that's just something that I didn't address earlier in my comments.
Totally.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through those 7 Rs?
Well, reduce, obviously, we buy too much. We're consuming, 60% more clothes today than we did 20 years ago. We keep them for half as long. It's actually secondhand September this month. So it's all about, not buying anything new and getting people into that habit of buying thrift or not buying anything at all. And then reuse again, which is, anything from swapping, borrowing, just shopping your own closet. Like, how many garments do we have in our closets that we just barely ever wear? And taking good care of our clothes. It's going to make them last longer if you love your clothes. And then, repurpose, rental, repair, resale. We are seeing some retailers now, maybe not in Canada, but we're definitely seeing retailers that are actually taking back their own products and reselling them. So that's something that some brands, hopefully here in Canada, will start to adopt as well. And then again, recycle at the very bottom of that hierarchy.
Yeah.
I would just like to add something here as well. When we were analyzing the waste streams, we actually found a lot of garments from second-hand stores, and they even had the price tag of the second-hand company on them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, we're celebrating secondhand, and it's definitely better to buy a secondhand garment than buying a brand new one. But, most people, when they buy secondhand, they go totally crazy and buy way more than they would ever see. And a lot of secondhand garments are also not worn by the new owner. So I think this is kind of a craziness which needs to stop. And it's not only in the new materials, but it's also in secondhand business. There's no sense buying a secondhand garment and then throwing it away without wearing it, just because it was so cheap. And I think that is this main problem of this total overconsumption, where there's no limit.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm kind of, really sometimes hesitant to secondhand, because I can see that it doesn't really help people to change the way how they want to consume. It just increases the quantity of buying more. It's not really, making people more aware about what they buy and how they want to combine it.
Right.
Yeah.
Philippe, did you have something to share there?
I was going to say, we've seen very successful swap schemes or take back and then resell schemes with furniture that are very, very popular right now in Canada. So that the same thing could easily happen for fashion. It's just a matter of finding the brand that actually wants to host those activities.
Yeah.
But I think we've already come from quite far off when in the last couple of years. So there's definitely more that can happen.
Yeah.
And again, I think this is the right momentum for that.
Yeah, and there's brands like, Nudie Jeans, who actually does take back customer jeans and they repair it and they resell it as their reuse line. And sometimes, you know what, they're really cool. Like, I would pay more for those jeans sometimes than actually one of the new pairs. So it's really interesting.
Well, it opens up, it opens up a whole new market, I think, for customers. If you look at what the Renewal Workshop's doing with the North Face, right? So they're cleaning and repairing these damaged items that then the North Face can sell to a customer who maybe not been able to afford a premium outerwear or jacket or product of theirs. So they're not necessarily cannibalizing their customer base. They're actually increasing their customer base by doing that. And Eileen Fisher is another example. You mentioned Nudie, but Eileen Fisher's been doing this now for a number of years. And yeah, so it's exciting to see more and more brands that are doing this. And then also, I'm really excited about, I'm going to be launching the swap chain in Canada in the coming months. So I'm working with an organization called Lablaco, who basically works with retailers to host swaps in their stores. So hopefully we'll be doing something in 2020, if not, could be early 2021.
Amazing. I mean,
I think it goes even one step further. We're doing a lot of good stuff here, but I think the really good stuff starts actually really at the design level.
At the design.
And we talked about jeans, and you talked about Nudie jeans, and you said, this is great, they're repairing them, but look how many jeans are actually sold, which are already destroyed when they actually are in the store, because they're extra destroyed. So
I know you hate all the ripped
obsolescence.
Yes, the ripped jeans.
and I'm just saying, I'm not saying don't wear those jeans, but the problem is if you have those ripped cool jeans, then you will go with your toe, you will go in your jeans, and after the second time, when you forget that your whole, your knee is ripped, you will stuck with your toe in those pants and you will totally rip them. Yeah. And this is kind of planned, it's planned that the material breaks down. And now imagine this pants goes into the second-hand channel, or somebody, a sorter, needs to define, is this now a pants which has a value? Or is it fashion because it is ripped and it has a higher value, or it's just really broken and ripped and needs to be recycled? So my claim here is we need to think way more when we design garments. So if we think we need to make distressed jeans, and I don't want to say we shouldn't have them, but I want from the designer to think about how they can protect the hole, that it doesn't get bigger when you stick with your toe in it.
Totally. Yeah,
So I think a lot of the recycling problems and the reuse starts actually really with the design of the garment. How can you make it better?
Yeah, there was
Absolutely.
that I saw that 80% of the impact of the garment starts at the design stage. So yeah, designing for circularity, making sure that your buttons, your rivets are all, they're easily detachable, and then ensuring that it can be either broken down into something else or, you know, repaired and kept in the circle longer.
And
So,
even like designing, like keeping like in mind mono materials, you know, so again, coming back to that whole blend, like make a garment from one fabric, you know, you don't need to be blending it and adding spandex or adding cotton to polyester or vice versa. Like just that's also a big part of designing for circularity.
right.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, you know, with transparency and supply chain and trying to know more about what they buy is a good avenue for that, because, you know, it's really hard to come up with blended materials when you want to have like full transparency on where it was sourced. So it also, I think, plays into that definitely. So there are aspects to look at, you know, in the way supply chain transparency plays out.
I think it kind of all somehow ties together, for me at least. You know, circularity, traceability, it all kind of comes together into one. You know, if you have traceability, you know what the contents of the product is, and so you can knowingly recycle it, whether or not you need to separate it or not, what dyes went into it, etc., etc. So it somehow all seems to come full circle, and I'd love to end off with just kind of like maybe just a note on what you'd like to see from the industry and ways they can collaborate to accelerate circularity. If you have any points on that.
Well, you know, Sabine and I and Philippe was a part of the Ontario Textile Diversion Collaborative, and really that was, I think, a true collaboration where you bring together a bunch of different stakeholders who all have the same interests at heart, but who may be competitors. And if, you know, everybody's willing to sort of check that at the door, along with their egos, and really kind of work together. We just don't have time to be duplicating resources and time and reinventing the wheel. So there's enough out there. There's a lot of smart people out there. I think we just need to get better at connecting those dots and really bringing together all of those people to solve this problem.
I love that. Don't have time for duplicating resources. Yeah, definitely not. And
completely. I think the current crisis, you know, reminds us that, you know, you'll have to find efficiencies where you can, and you know, that this is clearly an area where a lot of efficiencies can be found. And we, you know, I think in terms of what I would like to see, I think many fashion companies probably needed some kind of a wake-up call, because they've been growing using the same model for decades and decades, years and years, and they don't necessarily see that this needed to be, you know, to be something that to be challenged. And now with the crisis, I think it's just going to be, you know, talking money, and they're actually going to be have to change that, because if they want to survive in the current situation, they'll be, you know, they'll be having a more sounder kind of you know, bottom line. So if they do that, especially with the reduction of the production, I think that will be something that a lot of people will turn to. So hopefully we're not stuck with dealing with all of that cheap clothing that's you know, with very poor quality, that even folks in you know, abroad are not necessarily interested in buying as secondhand.
Well, that was amazing. I think from all of what was just said, it seems to me like a reduction is the first order of business in terms of circularity. And you know, we are on our path to it. The technology's there, but investment is needed. Maybe government help is needed too. And actually deeming textiles as a waste source is vital in order to achieve actual textile recycling. So I really appreciate you guys sharing your insights. I am extremely excited to have you all three together here. Like you said, the Ontario Textile Diversion Collaborative, I was a huge fan of that, and it was a pleasure for me to get to talk to you guys today. So thanks again, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.